December 1st, 2025. In the deceptively calm waters south of Florida, 50 pirate speedboats carrying more than 400 armed raiders surged toward the MS Liberty Star, a 14,800-ton American cruise ship, quietly transporting 200 enemies as passengers, including veterans, retirees, and families on a winter holiday. From the darkness, the pirates unleashed RPG-7 rockets, AK-103 rifles, and PKM machine guns, their tracers ripping through the night like burning arrows. In less than 4 minutes, they were almost alongside the ship, close enough for passengers to hear their engines roar. But the pirates had miscalculated. They had underestimated the flag fluttering at the stern. The response was overwhelming. An MH-60J Jayhawk helicopter thundered in from the north, fast-roping 10 Navy SEALs onto the deck, while 3 U.S. warships, USCGC Stone, USS Milwaukee, and USCGC Bernard C. Weber, closed in at attack speed. Above them, an MQ-8C Fire Scout drone locked onto the pirates' formation, streaming real-time targeting data. America did not come to negotiate. It came with steel, fire, and fury, because when pirates strike a U.S.-flagged vessel, they are not fighting tourists. They are fighting the full might of the United States. At 5:40 p.m. on December 1st, 2025, the Caribbean looked like paradise carved from gold. The MS Liberty Star, a 420-foot, 14,800-ton American cruise liner, carrying 276 passengers, glided across calm waters 78 nautical miles south of Key West, Florida. Most on board were retirees escaping the winter chill, people looking for one quiet holiday before the year ended. Laughter drifted across the open decks. A jazz quartet played soft standards. Champagne flutes chimed like tiny bells. No one knew that beneath the perfect evening lay a threat larger than anything the Caribbean had seen in 3 decades. On the bridge, Captain Robert Hayes, a man with 32 years at sea, studied the radar. A thin cluster of moving dots had appeared on the far edge of the display. Nothing unusual at first, but then the numbers changed. 9, 14, 22 signals, all pushing against the waves at 32 to 35 knots, far too fast for fishing boats. And they were multiplying. Within minutes, the radar registered more than 40 contacts, spreading like a swarm. Hayes tried transmitting a routine check to Coast Guard Sector Miami. The reply came fragmented, buried under static. Storm interference cut the clarity by nearly 40%. He repeated the call, still broken. The air pressure outside had dropped by 2.8 millibars in under 10 minutes, a sign of a developing squall. Yet even as the first officer tightened his jaw, the ballroom below glowed with warm lights. Elderly couples posed for photos against the sunset. A child chased bubbles across the deck. Peace rested on the surface like glass. But behind the bridge windows, Hayes's voice finally hardened. Raise internal alert to condition yellow quietly, because the Liberty Star was not moving through open waters anymore. It was drifting straight into a hunt. By 7:12 p.m., the night over the Bahamas Passage had turned pitch black, swallowing the horizon. In the bridge, Captain Hayes watched the radar shift from harmless blips to a nightmare unfolding in real time. The once scattershot dots had merged into 50 high-speed pirate skiffs, each pushing 35 to 38 knots, slicing through the waves with the precision of a military strike team. This was not chaos. This was discipline. And only one group in the Caribbean operated with that level of lethal coordination: the Red Scythe Syndicate. A pirate empire with numbers that stunned even U.S. intelligence analysts. 18 major attacks in 14 months, over $140 million, stolen more than 110 hostages, taken 29 civilians killed and 0 ships ever rescued before the pirates escaped. Worse, NSA would later confirm that a syndicate informant had leaked the ship's passenger asset data, $82.6 million worth of jewelry, cash, and luxury metals on board. The Liberty Star was not just a target. It was the largest moving treasure trove in the Caribbean holiday season. The syndicate had waited 23 days tracking weather patterns and Coast Guard patrol gaps for the ship to drift into what traffickers called the blackout corridor, where over 62% of radio calls failed during winter squalls. Outside, the wind spiked to 43 miles per hour. Lightning forked across the water, revealing the faint outlines of skiffs' long, narrow metal-plated hulls built to absorb gunfire. Hayes sent a third distress call. Again, only fragments survived the interference. 50 fast contacts, armed, closing, request immediate. Silence swallowed the rest. Below deck, the passengers continued dancing, completely unaware that the largest pirate assault against a U.S. civilian vessel since 1983 was minutes away. Hayes lowered the binoculars slowly. "They're not passing by," he said. "They're coming for us." At 8:04 p.m., the first flash tore across the sky, lightning splitting the horizon in a jagged white scar. A second later, the truth revealed itself: 50 skiffs, now less than 1.8 nautical miles away, accelerating in perfect formation. Their engines screamed over the rising storm. Their silhouettes, lit by the lightning, looked like a pack of metal predators charging through the dark. Then came the sound that changed everything. Gunfire. A burst from a 7.62 ppm shredded across the waves, slamming into the Liberty Star's starboard siding. Sparks exploded. A second volley, this time from AK-103s firing at nearly 600 rounds per minute, ripped across the upper deck. Windows shattered, plates crashed. Elderly passengers fell to the floor as shockwaves punched through the dining hall. And then the first RPG came. A Soviet-pattern RPG-7 fired from a skiff only 1.4 nautical miles out, streaked toward the ship like a comet and detonated against the promenade railing. The blast tore a 4-foot hole in the steel plating and sent 2 security crewmen sprawling across the deck. Smoke flooded the corridor. The fire alarm screamed. The Liberty Star had officially become a battlefield. Brace for impact. Lock all doors. Captain Hayes shouted, his voice cracking through the internal comms. On the exterior cameras, the pirates were terrifyingly methodical. 12 skiffs closed distance first, forming a claw-shaped formation around the ship. Hooks flew into the air. Steel grapples clanged against the hull. Within seconds, over 30 pirates scaled the ropes boots, slamming onto the lower decks. Most carried modified AKs, but others held machetes and crowbars, tools made for terror, not bargaining. The ship trembled again as another RPG struck below the observation deck, blowing out 14 glass panels in a single blast. The pressure wave knocked a 72-year-old passenger unconscious, as others shielded children beneath overturned tables. Inside the bridge, the radar blared a continuous alarm. Hayes's first officer shouted, "They're breaching port side multiple entry points." And then, through the chaos, a new voice crackled over the emergency radio, cutting through the static, but still unmistakable U.S. Coast Guard and Navy units inbound. Estimated arrival, 6 minutes. Hold your position. 6 minutes. Across the ship, crew members exchanged looks that told the same truth. 6 minutes in a pirate assault is an eternity. Outside, the skiffs circled for another strike. More hooks flew. More men climbed. The Liberty Star was being swallowed alive. At 8:11 p.m., just 7 minutes after the first gunshots tore into the night, The storm above the Liberty Star split open with a roar that drowned even the pirates' engines. Out of the darkness came the unmistakable thumping of rotor blades, heavy, deliberate, unstoppable. The first to appear was the MH-60J Jayhawk, slicing through sheets of rain with its searchlight carving a silver tunnel across the chaos. The helicopter hovered barely 42 feet above the deck, fighting winds gusting past 48 miles per hour. Beneath it, the Liberty Star burned in 3 places, its once white superstructure smeared black with smoke. Then the side doors of the Jayhawk opened, and America dropped in. 6 Navy SEALs and 4 SWCC operators fast-roped onto the deck in less than 11 seconds, boots hitting steel with the precision of a machine. Their rifles swept across the shadows M4A1 carbines with thermal sights, firing 56 rounds at up to 900 rounds per minute. The first pirate that appeared near the stairwell never even had time to lift his weapon. A controlled 3-round burst dropped him instantly. Another pirate leaped from the railing with a machete raised. A single shot from a SEAL's suppressed Mk-25P226 cut him down mid-air. But the storm was far from over. Beyond the bow, the sea erupted with the arrival of America's steel backbone USCGC Stone, WMSL 758, USS Milwaukee, LC-5, and USCG Bernard C. Weber, WPC 1101, 3 vessels totaling nearly 12,000 tons of displacement, all charging toward the Liberty Star at high speed. The moment Stone closed to firing range, its Mk-110 57mm cannon roared 1 shell every half-second, each round capable of shredding a skiff in a single hit. The first shot punched through a pirate boat and ignited its fuel tank. The second shot obliterated another skiff entirely, leaving nothing but burning fragments raining onto the waves. Milwaukee joined in with its Mk-46 30mm Bushmaster II, spraying tungsten rounds that tore through hulls like paper. In just 4 minutes, U.S. ships fired over 5 to 600 rounds of machine gun fire, 31 high-explosive shells, and 19 illumination flares, turning the storm-dark sea white as day. On the Liberty Star's lower deck, the SEALs moved room to room, clearing corridors, rescuing elderly passengers still trembling behind locked doors. Gunfire echoed through the stairwells. 2 pirates tried breaching the medical bay. Both were neutralized before they made it 5 steps inside. Outside, the pirate formation collapsed. Skiffs spun out of control. Some burned, some sank. Others fled blindly into the storm. For the first time that night, the Liberty Star stopped shaking because the full weight of the United States had finally arrived, and the ocean itself seemed to shift in America's favor. By 2 p.m., the storm still hammered the Liberty Star, but the battlefield had shifted. Gunfire faded into distant echoes. The last pirate skiff drifted upside down, half submerged, burning quietly like a dying torch in the dark. What had been the largest pirate assault in over 40 years had ended in less than an hour. The numbers were staggering. Across the waves, 27 skiffs lay destroyed, some shattered by cannon fire, others torn apart by explosions or swallowed by the storm. On board the cruise ship, SEAL teams secured the corridors, stepping over spent casings and broken glass. The final tally stunned even veteran commanders: 21 pirates killed, 43 critically wounded, 62 captured alive, the largest single pirate arrest since 1981. 0 American passengers killed. 14 passengers injured, including 3 from RPG shock waves. The Liberty Star, though scarred, had survived over 160 bullet impacts and 3 direct RPG strikes without losing a single civilian life. A feat many later called the miracle at Passage Point. But the miracle only covered the surface. Once the firing stopped, intelligence officers moved fast. On board the captured skiffs, They found items far more disturbing than rifles and grenades. Hidden under waterproof tarps were 112 modified AK-103s, 26 RPG launchers, 9 encrypted satellite phones, 4 laptops loaded with offshore banking data, and $7.4 million in cash wrapped in heat-sealed packets. The biggest shock came when analysts decoded the first satellite phone. Inside were financial transfers totaling $28.6 million, traced not to small criminal groups, but to a shadowy offshore foundation operating out of Trinidad and Suriname, entities previously flagged for funding extremist militias in West Africa. This was not a random attack. This was not desperation. This was a financed operation, a test, a probe into how fast and how hard the United States would respond if its civilians were targeted in international waters. As the storm calmed, the 3 U.S. vessels formed a protective triangle around the Liberty Star, escorting it back toward Key West. SEAL medics tended to the wounded. Elderly passengers sobbed quietly, some holding each other, some praying. Captain Hayes stepped onto the bridge balcony and looked at the ocean glowing faintly with burning wreckage. His voice was steady but cold. "The sea isn't the same anymore." Washington would soon agree. At 10:45 p.m., the storm finally began to ease, but the battlefield it left behind was something no sailor on the Liberty Star would ever forget. Burnt fuel drifted across the surface like black ribbons. Twisted fragments of skiffs bobbed in the waves, and around the battered cruise ship, 3 U.S. vessels, USCGC Stone, USS Milwaukee, and USCGC Bernard C. Weber, formed a steel cordon that turned the dark sea into an active crime scene. The shooting had stopped, but the hunt had only begun. Within minutes, SWCC operators launched 2 Arhib interceptor boats into the water. Their mission was simple and dangerous: recover evidence before the ocean swallowed it. The Arhibs bounced across choppy waves, weaving between burning debris. The crews cataloged everything: spent casings, body armor, waterproof crates, even severed outboard motors still spinning weakly. Then came the first breakthrough. About 600 yards off the Liberty Star's port side, a drifting skiff was found miraculously intact, though its crew had abandoned it in panic. Inside were waterproof duffel bags containing 3 encrypted GPS trackers, 2 FPC-20 marine laptops, a satellite phone still powered on, and a hand-drawn map marked with 4 supply points. Those locations, scattered across mangrove-covered inlets in the Western Caribbean, were not random hideouts. They were resupply stations, fuel, ammunition, spare engines, enough to support hundreds of pirates, not just 50 skiffs. Overhead, the storm clouds parted just enough for the MQ-8C Fire Scout drone from USS Milwaukee to launch. Its thermal sensors scanned a 42 nautical mile radius, slicing through darkness like a blade. At 11:12 p.m., it picked up a faint heat signature creeping away from the combat zone, another skiff limping toward open water, moving at barely 14 knots. It was carrying something or someone. The Arhib teams closed in cautiously. The moment they saw what lay inside radio traffic on Milwaukee spiked. A U.S. intelligence officer aboard Stone received the first photos at 11:27 p.m. and went pale, not because of weapons, not because of bodies, but because of numbers. The sat phone logs showed high-value financial transfers far larger than the $7.4 million found earlier. One figure stood out: $600,000 transferred within 48 hours before the attack. This was no ordinary pirate raid. It was funded, coordinated, and part of something far bigger than 50 skiffs. The sea had gone quiet, but in that silence the threat only grew darker. By 12-hour, 18 a.m., USCGC Stone cut through the dark waters like a floating command center. Inside its operations bay, fluorescent lights hummed over a row of analysts, intelligence officers, and cybersecurity technicians working in absolute silence. Every recovered device from the skiff's phones, laptops, encrypted drives lay sealed in anti-static bags. What they would uncover in the next hour would change the nature of the incident entirely. The first breakthrough came fast. One satellite phone, waterlogged but still functional, contained 63 outbound financial messages, each routed through multiple proxy servers. The total value stunned the room. $28.6 million transferred within 48 hours before the attack. But it was where the money flowed that froze every analyst in place. The transfers originated from 7 countries, but funneled into one shadowed entity, the Meridian Tides Foundation, a charitable NGO headquartered in Suriname. Except it had no website, no staff, no public filings. What it did have, however, was a long history of appearing in classified financial reports linked to West African militia groups, Colombian trafficking cartels, and 3 Gulf region political financiers. The pattern was unmistakable. Someone with state-level resources had bankrolled the Red Scythe attack. Further decryption of the second phone revealed something even more chilling. A digital operations log titled Holiday Windfall, Phase 1. The file mapped out the Liberty Star attack in detail, speed formation, fallback routes. But it also contained a second document labeled Phase 2. It described preparations for a 2-wave assault set for December 22nd, targeting U.S.-flagged holiday cruise liners traveling along the Florida-Bahamas corridor. Projected force: 100 skiffs, 500 armed men. Estimated loot: $250 million. Objective: overwhelm. U.S. Coast Guard response time. This was not piracy. This was a full-scale maritime insurgency. Stone's XO read the final decrypted line aloud, his voice hollow. Test the American reaction. Record their timing. Adjust for the next strike. A hush fell over the operations room. The attack on the Liberty Star had not been a final objective. It was a rehearsal, an intelligence probe wrapped in blood and chaos. Outside, the sea was calm again. But inside the U.S. Command Center, alarms had begun to ring. The real fight was not over. It was just beginning. At 5:30 a.m., on December 2nd, 2025, the Caribbean dawned in a gray haze thick with salt and smoke. The Liberty Star, still scarred and trembling from the assault, drifted behind a column of U.S. warships. But the American response was no longer defensive. It was shifting into something far larger, something the pirates, and whoever bankrolled them, never anticipated. At 5:42 a.m., U.S. Southern Command issued a directive that flashed across encrypted channels: Operation Iron Tide. Full authority granted. Within 12 minutes, the quiet horizon erupted with motion. 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS Halsey DDG-97 and USS Bainbridge DDG-96, broke formation and surged south at 29 knots, cutting the waves like steel knives. Behind them, USS Milwaukee and USCGC Stone followed in close pursuit. Above a P-8, Poseidon roared across the sky, deploying sonobuoys and scanning the coastal mangroves with synthetic aperture radar. For the first time in decades, the United States Navy launched a counter-piracy operation with combat-level fire authorization. The Poseidon was first to make contact. At 6:03 a.m., its radar operators spotted a heat bloom deep in the Caribbean wetlands, a hidden Red Scythe resupply base tucked inside a narrow inlet shielded by dense mangrove forests. The P-8 transmitted coordinates instantly. Halsey adjusted course. The engines thundered. At 6:21 a.m., U.S. forces reached the shoreline. What they found inside stunned even combat veterans. Tarps covered 15 tons of ammunition, stacked in rows like a miniature armory. Wooden crates held over 300 rifles each, stamped with serial numbers filed off. A separate cache contained 80 RPG launchers, wrapped in oiled cloth. Tied to the jetty were 12 military-grade speedboats, faster and deadlier than anything used in the attack on the Liberty Star. The moment U.S. operators approached the remnants of the syndicate erupted in gunfire. The battle lasted 14 minutes, but felt like a lifetime. 16 pirates neutralized, 9 others captured alive, 1 Navy SEAL wounded but stabilized on site. Then came the order. Halsey fired precision 5-inch shells, obliterating fuel tanks, ammunition depots, and every vessel in the inlet. The sky lit up orange. The shock wave rippled across the water like a rolling wall. In less than 18 minutes, a $12 million criminal infrastructure was reduced to charred ruin. Operation Iron Tide had begun with fire and thunder, and the message was unmistakable. No one attacks Americans at sea and walks away. By 8:00 a.m., the sun finally pierced the horizon. But instead of calm, it illuminated a region spiraling into shock. News of the Liberty Star attack and the U.S. counterstrike that followed spread across the Caribbean faster than any storm. In Nassau, the Bahamian Parliament convened an emergency session for the first time since Hurricane Dorian in 2019. Lawmakers pored over classified briefings showing sonar tracks, drone images, and a chilling map of projected pirate routes, including 6 that passed just 40 nautical miles from Nassau's cruise ports. Tourism officials feared a catastrophe. The Bahamas stood to lose $600 million in bookings within 72 hours. Meanwhile, in Port of Spain, tempers exploded. Trinidadian officials, furious over U.S. intelligence linking the Meridian Tides Foundation to offshore accounts in their jurisdiction, denied involvement and accused Washington of premature blame. Reporters mobbed the Prime Minister as he walked into Parliament, demanding answers about allegations that shook the region's financial credibility. Across the Caribbean, 5 governments issued statements pointing fingers at each other, each determined not to be associated with the largest organized pirate attack since 1983. But Washington was done waiting. At 8:27 a.m., the Pentagon announced a temporary maritime security perimeter covering over 210,000 square kilometers, a zone stretching from Florida's southern tip to the northern coast of Venezuela. Within this red shield corridor, every unidentified vessel moving faster than 18 knots would be intercepted. The U.S. Navy surged reinforcements, 10 additional Coast Guard cutters, 3 P-8 Poseidon aircraft, 2 MQ-9B Sea Guardian drones, and 1 additional destroyer, USS Ross DDG-71. This was no longer search and rescue. This was maritime lockdown. In Miami, hundreds of cruise passengers canceled departures. Lines stretched along the terminals as elderly travelers demanded refunds. Cable news channels ran non-stop footage of burning skiffs and SEAL teams lowering injured passengers from helicopters. And then, at 9:10 a.m., the White House issued its first national address. The president spoke calmly, but the weight of his words stunned the nation. Any attack on U.S. civilians will be answered tenfold. If this was a test, we are prepared for the final exam. On Capitol Hill, even opposing parties stood shoulder to shoulder. Committees demanded investigations. The Department of the Treasury froze 48 offshore accounts connected to the Meridian Tides Foundation. The Caribbean, once sold as a paradise of calm waters, and coral light had become a geopolitical minefield overnight. And everyone, governments, corporations, tourists, now feared the same question if 50 skiffs almost brought down a U.S. cruise ship. What could 100 do, and who was truly behind them? By the afternoon of December 3, 2025, the MS Liberty Star finally reached Key West, under a muted gray sky. Its once bright hull was scarred with 160 bullet strikes, 3 RPG impact craters, and soot stretching across half the deck. Passengers disembarked slowly, some limping, some holding hands, many in tears. SEALs guided the elderly down the gangway, offering quiet words of reassurance. No one raised their voice. No one smiled. The shock still clung to them like salt on their skin. Reporters captured the silent procession, but the real story was the message carried in the ship's wounds. In Washington, the incident was formally classified as the most coordinated pirate attack against U.S. civilians since 1983. Naval briefings warned Congress that a new kind of threat had emerged, pirates backed not by desperation, but by money intelligence and political cover. A hybrid enemy operating between nations in the shadows where law and jurisdiction grow thin. Captain Hayes, exhausted but unbroken, submitted his final written report that evening. It contained only one line: "The sea is no longer a place of escape. Someone is turning it into a battlefield." And for the first time in decades, America believed him. If you want more breakdowns of real and simulated frontline confrontations at sea like this video, and subscribe to Titan Navy so you never miss what happens when the next wave comes.